It was a perfect afternoon in the countryside. The sky was clear, the sun high, casting a warm golden hue across the vast green field. The air was filled with the sweet scent of grass, and the sound of birds chirping in the trees added to the peaceful atmosphere. In the distance, a herd of cows grazed lazily, their large bodies moving slowly as they munched on the grass. The cows seemed content, their attention solely focused on their meal. But across the field, there stood a German shepherd, its eyes narrowed, its body rigid with tension. The dog wasn't concerned with the beauty of the day or the peaceful setting. Its focus was entirely on the herd of cows. The German shepherd had always been a protector, and this moment was no different. It had been trained to guard its territory, and the cows were in its domain. The dog stood perfectly still for a moment, its ears pricked and its nose twitching as it took in every sound and movement. The cows were unaware of the dog's presence, continuing to graze peacefully. But the shepherd knew something the cows didn't. This land was its responsibility. It wasn't just a dog out for a leisurely walk. It was a protector, an enforcer of boundaries. The German shepherd's body tensed further as it took a few slow steps forward. Its gaze never left the cows, who were still unaware of the approaching threat. The dog's instincts kicked in. It could feel the challenge in the air. Its task was simple: protect its space, keep the cows away. This was more than just barking at animals. It was a duty. The German shepherd had been raised to understand the importance of protecting its territory from any perceived intruders. As the dog walked closer, its tail remained stiff, and its movements were deliberate. It wasn't acting out of aggression, but out of a deep-rooted sense of responsibility. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty in the dog's steps. This was its job. The German shepherd was built for this purpose: to defend, to protect, and to assert authority. Its strong, muscular frame carried a quiet but unmistakable confidence. It was a guardian, and the cows had unwittingly wandered into its jurisdiction. The German shepherd continued its slow, calculated approach, each step echoing with quiet determination. The cows were still grazing, their focus entirely on the grass beneath their hooves. The dog was almost close enough to make its move. Its mind was set. It needed to assert its dominance and make sure these cows understood who was in charge. Without warning, the German shepherd let out a deep, commanding bark. The sound shattered the peaceful silence of the field, its sharp tone reverberating across the open space. The cows, startled by the sudden noise, raised their heads slowly. Their eyes met the German shepherd's, but they didn't seem alarmed. They were not afraid. Instead, they simply looked at the dog for a moment before continuing to munch on the grass. The German shepherd, its ears still alert and its body still poised, barked again. This time, it was louder and more forceful. The dog's tail stood straight, rigid with intent. It paced back and forth, barking at the cows with an almost rhythmic intensity. The German shepherd's purpose was clear. It was trying to drive them away, to make them realize that they were trespassing on its territory. But the cows remained unimpressed. The dog's bark echoed through the air, but the cows showed no sign of fear. They barely even acknowledged the dog's presence. They simply continued eating, unbothered by the growing volume of the shepherd's barks. The German shepherd's frustration began to build. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. In the past, a simple bark or even the sight of its fierce stance would have sent any animal running. But these cows weren't responding. Instead of running away, they stayed rooted in place. The dog's barking, no matter how loud or forceful, was having no effect. The German shepherd paced around the cows, its barks growing louder and more insistent. It circled them, hoping that the increased pressure would push them to move. But the cows remained as calm as ever. They didn't even flinch. The German shepherd, no stranger to pushing animals out of its territory, couldn't fathom why the cows weren't reacting. This wasn't normal. Every other animal, no matter how big or small, knew to respect the German shepherd's boundaries. The dog stopped for a moment, breathing heavily, and took a step back. It stood still, its eyes still fixed on a herd of cows. But the cows did not move. They were still grazing, completely unfazed by the dog's efforts. The German shepherd stared at them in disbelief. What was happening? Why weren't they responding? The dog had always been able to make any animal listen to it. But here it was, facing a herd of cows that didn't seem the least bit intimidated by the shepherd's barking. The cows didn't seem to care. They just kept eating, their heads bobbing up and down as they consumed the lush grass. It was a strange sight, the German shepherd, with all its strength and presence, completely ignored by these calm, grazing creatures. Frustration turned confusion. The German shepherd, still tense and on edge, barked again, but this time it was less forceful. The dog's energy seemed to be slowly draining. It had been barking for what felt like forever, and still the cows didn't move. The shepherd's heart raced as it considered its next move. What more could it do? The dog's instincts told it to keep barking, but something in its gut told it that the cows weren't going anywhere. The German shepherd, usually a force of nature, now stood at a crossroads. It had tried everything it knew to move these cows, but nothing had worked. It had barked to the top of its lungs, charged back and forth, and paced around them, yet the cows were unaffected. There had to be something more to this situation. The dog, normally confident in its actions, now found itself questioning its role in this encounter. Minutes passed, and the German shepherd began to slow. Its barking had subsided, and its body language softened. The frustration that had filled the dog's mind now shifted into something more thoughtful. The cows continued to eat, and the German shepherd simply watched them for a while, taking in the scene. It had done everything it could think of, but the cows were simply not reacting. The German shepherd's sharp instincts kicked in, and it began to reassess the situation. This wasn't a battle of strength or dominance. The cows were simply not responding to the dog's typical methods of asserting control. The more the shepherd tried to push them, the more it realized that these cows weren't going to be moved by force alone. For the first time, the German shepherd paused and reflected. It was a rare moment for a dog that had been trained to take charge, to guard, and to protect. But as it stood there, observing the cows, it came to a surprising realization. Not every challenge could be faced with barking and charging. Sometimes, simply letting things unfold on their own was the right answer. The dog relaxed, lowering its tail and breathing deeply. The tension that had held it tight for so long began to ease. The cows continued to graze, completely oblivious to the dog's internal conflict. The German shepherd had fought a battle that it couldn't win, not because it lacked the strength or determination, but because the cows had shown it something important. Sometimes patience and acceptance are the true marks of strength. As the German shepherd stood in the field, its body finally relaxed, it took a last look at the cows. They were still grazing peacefully, unfazed by the earlier confrontation. The dog, once fierce and determined, now turned away. It had fought as hard as it could, but now the right thing to do was to step back. The cows hadn't responded to its bark, and the dog understood that forcing the issue wasn't going to help. With a slow, deliberate motion, the shepherd began to walk away, its head held high, but its movements much calmer. It wasn't retreating in defeat. No, it was simply letting the situation be what it was. The German shepherd had learned something important that day. Not every challenge required force, and sometimes the best way to handle a situation was to step back and let things unfold naturally. As the dog walked away, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the field. The cows continued to eat, undisturbed by the presence of the German shepherd. The park returned to its quiet peace, the tension that had once filled the air now replaced by calm. The German shepherd's retreat was not a loss, but a quiet victory. It had learned that not every conflict needed to be won with barks and force. Sometimes, understanding when to stop was the most powerful lesson of all, and as the dog faded into the distance, the cows remained in their peaceful world, unaware of the lesson the German shepherd had learned.